Okay. That's the problem as well, is I walk up there, I turn the camera on, and then I come back, and the first shot that people will get on YouTube is me rearranging my trousers. Pulling them up. Not good. Okay.
Braces?
It's an option, isn't it? Or maybe a belt. Did have one, it broke. There you go. That's obviously saying something about the state of me in this present moment. How about that? So, again, eyes open or closed as you see fit. Maybe start with them open so you know the limitations of your arm. So as you breathe in, bring the hands together and be aware of them touching. Be aware of the fingertips touching at the top, and then as you breathe out, just pause and lower the arms. And it's really just about connecting your breath with the movements of your body. Being aware that you're breathing. And just aware of your arms and the movements of your arms. And we're not doing anything because we're not human doings. We're not thinking anything because we're not human thinkings. We're just being. In this moment of time, just being human beings. Connecting our breath, the movement of our arms, in and out, up and down, moment by moment. When you're ready, you can relax the arms, open your eyes.
Didn't it once.
Ready?
So I didn't it at once.
You did not? I'm going to try that. So stories. Stories. I brought 3 books with me. I'm not going to read these books. Too long anyway. But just as sort of little illustration. So these are 3 of my favourite books, and they're all very different. They're all very different indeed. So the first one I've got there is a book called The Dirt, which is the confessions of the world's most notorious rock band, Motley Crue. Not the best rock band by any means. Not virtuoso musicians, but they certainly lived the rock and roll lifestyle. And the majority of this book is absolutely disgusting filth. But it's very entertaining. It's very, very interesting stories, if that's if that works your fun. So that's one. So an autobiographical, slightly lurid, not slightly, incredibly lurid set of writing. Then the other one I've got is, and this is one of my very favourite books, this is a book called The Tipping Point. This is by a chap called Malcolm Gladwell, who's he's an intellectual. And this really is, it's a research piece. It's about him exploring an idea, or exploring a set of ideas, and he uses a lot of stories within this. Oh, they're all real, it's factual. They are, they're not fictional stories. They are anecdotal of things that have happened, but they're definitely stories, and he uses those to illustrate his point. And then the final one is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by a chap called Hunter S. Thompson. I guess this says something about me, because this again is, it's quite debauched, really. But perhaps should have gone for something a little bit more classic. But this is very much about somebody imbuing a story with their own. You read this book and you get a real sense of Hunter's personality, his religious beliefs, his political beliefs, his philosophy on life, just everything about his own being, his own personality is imbued within the story and the way that he creates the story. And you don't ever really know how much of it is based upon real facts and how much of it is fiction. But it's just glorious in its writing. So we've got something that's very poetic and beautiful. The language in it is just fantastic. So that's one story there. Then we've got another one which is very much an education piece, and then we've got another one which is just lurid tales of depravity. And we like stories, human beings. We like stories. Since we developed language, we have used stories for different purposes. Many years ago, it was because most people couldn't read and write. So if you needed to educate people, then you do it through story, because you can remember a story. Even if you don't remember all of the details of a story, you can remember the general passage of a story. And so if you've got to, if you want to teach people something, then you wrap it up in a story, because you can tell a story and then people remember the story and then they can go and tell the story. And it's a good way to educate people. And it's also a great way to entertain people. Storytellers of old were the entertainers. Theatre was born out of individual storytellers. It started off with an individual storyteller recounting a tale or narrating a poem, and then gradually it became actors. And the whole thing grew into theatre as we know it. So stories are educational and entertainment. Now I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll read a little story. This is not my one, this is somebody else's story. This is an old Chinese Buddhist story. So I'll read you a little story and then we'll do another exercise. And then we'll talk a bit more. So this one is called The Farmer. And this is an ancient Chinese story. Once upon a time there was an old farmer who had worked his crops for many years. One day his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbours came to visit. "Such bad luck," they said sympathetically. "Maybe," the farmer replied. The next morning the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. And the neighbours came round again and they said, "How wonderful!" "Maybe," replied the old man. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, and he was thrown off and he broke his leg. The neighbours came around to offer their sympathy and said how unfortunate this was. "Maybe," answered the farmer. And the day after that, the military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. The neighbours congratulated the farmer on how well things had turned out. "Maybe," said the farmer. So that's just a little education. Right, let's do another little mindful exercise and I'll read you another story. So we'll begin now by tuning in our senses. So what I'd like you to do is just start by having a look around. Opening your eyes and just allowing the visual information, what you can see in this moment, to just be absorbed by your eyes. And then And once you've had a little look around, you can close your eyes and you can move your awareness to your body. Become aware of the weight of your body, sat in the chair. Aware of your head balanced on your neck. Aware of gravity pulling down on your shoulders. Aware of gravity pulling down through your spine, through your bottom, pressing down into the seat. Aware of your feet in contact with the floor. You can be aware of the clothes on your skin, on your legs, your arms, your back, your chest. And you can maybe even become aware of a very faint movement of air on your hands, on your neck, on your face. And then take a nice breath through the nose and just smell. Just being aware of smell in this moment in time right now. And then taste. Just move your awareness to the taste in your mouth right now. And then finally you can begin to listen. Just be aware of sound as it happens, moment by moment. If your mind wanders or you find yourself distracted, that's absolutely fine. But just bring your awareness back to listening. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So before I read another story, does anybody have a favourite story that they would like to mention or bring to the group?
All my stories at the moment are children's stories.
Okay.
I do the library, it's our children's centre. And 2 days a week I read stories to the kiddies.
Okay, and what's been your favourite recently?
At the moment they're into the room on the broom.
Oh yeah. I like that
Because
one.
it's
Julia
rhyme,
Lawson.
they love
Yeah,
rhymes,
that's
they're
great.
all preschool.
Yeah.
And of course the Buffalo. They're two of their very favourites, and it's just...
It's the same author, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. She just got it right.
Yeah.
But children love the repetition in stories, and if they can join in as well, then it's classic. So yeah, they're the two that are running around at the moment.
Well, that's appropriate actually, because the next little story is one that I've put together because I'm developing a mindfulness program that we can do in schools, and for not preschool, that's probably a little too young. They're fairly in the moment, but for infants, so 6, 7, 8-year-olds. Because I figured if we can teach 6, 7, and 8-year-olds how to be mindful, then that will stand them in good stead. Then they might take it home and teach their parents how to be mindful. I wrote a little story to help illustrate that, and it reminded me of something that I'd come across before, where it was Einstein that had said, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, then you don't understand it yourself. So this is me attempting to explain it to a 6-year-old, and also I figured that even you as grown-ups may be able to gain something from it, and also give me some feedback maybe as well. I'm always open to feedback. So I'll read this, and then we'll see. So this is called Moby the Monkey. Once upon a time, there was a monkey called Moby. Moby lived in the jungle with lots of other animals. Every year, the animals had a big party. They would play games, sing songs, and eat lots of delicious party food. It was the day of the party, and Moby set off across the jungle to meet the other animals. He started to think about last year's party. I'm sure the parrots cheated when we played the games. It's not fair. I never win, thought Moby, and he started to fidget. And the anacondas better not tease me like they did last year. I was really upset. Then he started to think about what might happen this year. I wonder if there will be banana cake. I bet those greedy gorillas will eat it all. It's my favourite, and I'll be cross if I don't get any, he said to himself. Moby was distracted. He was so busy thinking about last year's party and daydreaming about what might happen this year, he wasn't paying attention to where he was going. Before long, Moby was lost, and he found himself in a part of the jungle that he didn't recognise. He realised he was dangling from a tree above a river, with lots of crocodiles snapping their huge jaws below him. The crocodiles thought Moby looked very tasty. Moby started to feel afraid and very anxious. This was a dark and scary part of the jungle with lots of big, scary animals. He didn't know what to do. Then Moby stopped. He pulled himself up onto the branch to see where he was. He sat down quietly. He calmed down and took a few deep breaths. He began to listen. In the distance, he began to notice the sound of laughter. He could hear animals having fun. That must be the party, he said to himself. Moby felt more relaxed, and he began to follow the sound of the laughter. Swinging through the trees, the sound grew louder and louder, until it was very loud indeed. Moby arrived in a large clearing in the middle of the jungle. He could see lots of decorations hanging from the trees. He could see tables laid out with food, and he could see all of his jungle friends. Moby skipped over, he joined in, and he had a fantastic time.
Excellent.
So there we go. That's mine.
And that's it.
Mindful story for 6-year-olds. And I'm hoping that we could substitute any of the components. You know, maybe it's not.
A lot of the books that are written for children is to try and get them tuned into being aware of not worrying about. I've got books that are first time to the dentist. And
Yeah.
lots of books like that where they're trying to not to let them prejudge. Which is what that's about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Worrying about what last
exactly.
year was like, what this year's going to be like.
Exactly. Yeah.
And a lot of children's books are based around getting them to just think about now, not worry about what happened last time. That's great.
Well, if you come across any more when you're doing your reading at the
I
library,
will.
give me a shout.
Yes,
So I'm always
I'll write some.
on the lookout.
Titles down.
Good. That'd be good. And my daughter's into. She likes the Jacqueline Wilson books.
Oh, yes, my
Tracy
granddaughter's
Beaker,
into Jacqueline
Judah.
Wilson.
I don't know. I find them all too depressing because every single one starts off with somebody that's died or has been adopted or has been thrown in some horrendous situation. You just think, why could she not just write some lovely story that doesn't involve parents getting divorced or splitting up? I can see the point.
Well, one of the books that was given to me as a child, because it's a good book for a child to read, was Black Beauty. And if you think of all the stories he went through, it's like, you know, when Ginger goes past, it's like, oh! So it can't be any different, surely.
I mean, she's very, very popular. Jacqueline
I
Wilson.
think she's just published her 100th book.
I know.
So she's been quite prolific. She has been prolific.
Yeah.
I
But
suppose that.
the children can identify so much.
Yeah.
They really can. Their world isn't as, I mean, thinking about our childhood, sunny, bright, easy going. It's not like that anymore.
No, you can't just go down the beach for the day.
No way.
You know, mum's pack sandwiches, off you all go.
Yes.
And then come back when it gets dark. You can't do that.
No, you can't do that anymore.
And so that must be scary for them.
Yeah.
Well, is it?
Yeah. And she just hits them on the tune with it. This is the way life is, and you get over it. That's, I think, it's good for children to realise that the world isn't this nice pink rosy glow. It's harder than that.
Yes.
I think we do, especially at children, we're terrible at padding them, you know, like you say, the rosy glow and everything's wonderful in the garden.
Yeah, yeah.
It isn't.
They do get a bit mollycoddled.
They do, terribly so.
Yeah.
But no, I think she does. She covers some really difficult subjects well, in a way that, like, you know, 10, 11, 12-year-olds can identify with. And she's very popular.
She is. She certainly is.
I was made to sit down and read one of her books.
Well, that leads me on to talk about our own stories. Because the thing that we talk about, it all has to come back to mindfulness in some way. And again, it was. My mind was pricked by something that somebody else said to me, and she was talking about her story, and a lot of her anxiety comes from her story. And it got me to thinking about how some people cling to their story. I mean, we're all part of a story. You know, we are all involved in a story which is unfolding, moment by moment, if we're being mindful, present moment by present moment. But for many people, I think, they latch onto a story from the past, or they build their story. And often it can be a complete work of fiction.
Well, you only have to watch Jeremy Kyle.
Yeah, from events that have happened in the past. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly
You
right.
feel like just slapping them and going, get over it.
They did this, that happened, that happened. Some of it never even happened. They never said that to so-and-so or called so-and-so that particular name of that product. But they build this whole story. And then they drag that story around with them and constantly feel that they have to either live up to that story, or that their perception of the present moment, or the way that they are, their being, is in some way affected by, defined by that past story. Often people do it with illness. If they have an illness, they become defined by it. And often it can be a past story. It's not actually how they are now or what's affecting them now. It's from their past. So one of the benefits of practicing mindfulness and being mindful is it makes you aware of your story as it is in this moment in time. Because this moment in time is the only moment that you've got to experience your story in your life. And the story of those around you, because they're all intermingled, they're all interconnected. And so clinging on to some past story, you know, like some favourite book that we keep thumbing through time and time again to reassure ourselves, because, you know, you can guarantee that page 29 will always follow page 28. And people get reassurance. And I think that's probably why they cling to that past story, because there's some security and some reassurance. They can keep going over it again and again, like that well-thumbed book, and know that it follows a particular narrative. And that it
Or like those infants books that are repetitive.
Well, that's it, yes, I suppose that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's comfort in the repetition.
We like it when we're younger because there's that repetition and there's the comfort and there's the expectancy.
The security of knowing what comes next.
I mean, that's one of the things that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in this. There's a whole chapter about Sesame Street. And about how they set out to make an educational program for kids. At a time when, I mean, this would be in the late 60s, at a time when people thought, and I suppose they still do think to an extent, that television was no medium for educating kids. You know, they thought that it was, it's the goggle box that they just sit there, brain dead, mindless, staring at the screen, and there's no way that you can possibly educate children through that medium, because the engagement they have is completely different to what they would have in a classroom. And so these people set about devising a format that would actually educate. And then he goes on to talk about another programme that came afterwards, which is called Blue's Clues. I don't know if anybody's heard of Blue's Clues, which took everything that worked in Sesame Street and kind of amplified it, and they took the repetition as well to a whole new level, to the point where they showed the same episode every single day for a week on the telly. So Mondays and then Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it was the same episode all through the week. But the kids didn't get bored. The kids loved it. And all that happened was, as the week went on, they'd watch it every day throughout the week, and as the week went on, they got more and more involved. They got more and more engrossed. They got more and more from the programme. That repetition seemed to work to make it sticky. That's the marketing word that they tend to use. It was really sticky, that they just engaged.
I think you have to remember with children is they've got a very short concentration. So if you want them to take it on board, it's got to be more than once, because they've probably only taken 10 minutes. So if they've watched it every day for a week, they are going to take it in. Or if you show them once, they probably won't.
No, but there is that. Yeah, there is that. It's embedding it.
Kids also like to watch the same DVD over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the producers.
Well, this one wears them out.
That's what the producers picked up. They realised that they liked that repetition, so they actually used that as part of the learning experience. But then us adults do the same.
Yes.
But we do it. We don't do it with the good stuff. Well, I do. You know, there's a bottle I have drunk the same bottle of Rioja. Well, not the same bottle, but a particular bottle of Rioja on more than one occasion, and I can say I have enjoyed it on many occasions. But we do it with our problems. We do it with our story. We go over it and over it and over it, and we like to get comfort from the repetition of going over the same ground and going through the same anxiety and feeling ourselves reliving the same stresses and almost getting reassurance from the same stresses and strains that we had before.
Familiar with the pain.
Exactly.
Yeah, my family member has had some illnesses, and his body's kind of waiting for the pain, looking for the pain. You know.
People do. They look for the pain. Is that hurting today?
Yeah.
Or is that one hurting today? Is it this hurting today? Or is it this hurting today? Oh, there it is. It's that one. For it.
And the brain strengthens the neurons that fire. Every time it fires, it strengthens. So the more you fire that neuron, the stronger it becomes. So you've got to break that cycle.
Yes.
And how do we break that cycle?
Repetition.
By being mindful. By getting into the present moment, just being aware of things as they are, rather than constantly referring back to this story. Okay, let's finish off with some breathing. Breathing's my favourite, because we breathe and the breath happens. Breath has no story. You know, it's in, it's out, and then there's a little pause before you breathe in and breathe out again. That's the story. There's 3 elements to it. Beginning, middle and end. It's perfect. It's a simple little story in the breath. But that breath happens in the present moment. You know, we can't breathe in the past, we can't breathe in the future, we can only breathe now. And if you become aware of your breath, then you're instantly brought into the present moment. And so you're removed from that story, brought into the present story. So let's begin by closing our eyes, opening our ears and being aware of sound, and then connecting with the breath. Being aware of the breath at the nostrils as the air enters and leaves our body. And just follow each breath as it happens, each part of the breath. In, out, and then that tiny little pause before you do it again. And then follow the breath back and be aware of the breath behind the soft palate in the throat. And just aware that air is moving up and down as we breathe in and out. Now be aware of the breath at the top of the chest. And here you can connect with the movement as well. So you feel the chest expand and contract as you breathe in and out. Now be aware of the breath right down at the diaphragm. And now, as you breathe out, you can actually push the diaphragm all the way up so you expel all of the air from the lungs. And just for the next few breaths, breathe in deeply and breathe out completely. Push all the air out. Expel all of that stale air. Really connect with how physical that feels to expel all of the air and then inflate the lungs again. Now for the next few moments, just follow each individual breath as it happens. Breathing in, breathing out, and then a small pause between breaths. And if your mind wanders, if your mind is distracted, that doesn't matter, it's fine. Just acknowledge it's wandered, bring the awareness back to the breath. Allow the sound of the bowl to bring your awareness back to your breath. As you breathe in, connect with the aliveness inside of your being. Breathe in and feel alive. As you breathe out, smile at life. Breathe in and feel alive, breathe out and smile, and then allow that smile to just dissolve into the pause between breaths. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. And anytime you need to, you can connect with that breath. It will show you the way to get away from the crocodiles. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good week. I look forward to seeing you next time. Let's hope the cold doesn't set in too much now that the clocks have changed.